Docs, Jill Allen here. I am so excited to bring you another episode on my new Hey Docs podcast. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe on your favorite listening platforms or jump on over to YouTube if you want to watch this as a video. Today, I have an amazing guest, Dr. Amy B. Jackson. She is a board-certified orthodontist who has been in private practice for over 15 years and runs 4 practices in San Antonio, Texas. She began her dental career in Houston, where she attended the University of Texas Health Science Center. During her time there, she was recognized by the UT Health Science Center with the Dental Public Health Award for Community Service and was awarded a Summer Research Fellowship from the AADR and the Bernard G. Sarnett Award in Craniofacial Biology from the IADR. Dr. Jackson continued her specialty training for orthodontics at the University of Texas, where she completed a master's degree through the periodontal department and was awarded the AAED's research grant for her work with mid-palatal implants. Dr. Amy Jackson is also the founder and owner of Retainers for Life. Amy, it is so nice to have you on the show today. Thank you so much.
Bill, such a pleasure to be here, especially off the heels of a really great conference. So happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So I know that we are just going to have a lot of really great information to give the listeners out there. And the first thing, I know I introduced you already, but really what I'd love for you to do is just kind of give us your backstory to, how you got into this, to how you started Retainers for Life. So you want to go through that just a little bit so we can, give the audience something to, just to kind of find out a little bit more of that backstory. And then we're going to jump in and have some really fun conversations.
I'm happy to. I sit in the seat of having been this journey. So I'm like, it's not that exciting, but maybe it will be exciting to somebody out there. But I've been in Texas for the better part of 20 years, and I love being an orthodontist. Obviously, there are days that are hard and patients that are difficult, so I'm not immune to any of that. But at the end of the day, I really am thankful that I chose this profession, and I love being able to work with families and help people. So very, very thankful for all of that. As you well know, being a consultant, there are a lot of things that we do really well in the practice, and there are a lot of things that we either don't do very well, or we've been doing it the same way for so many years that even though it's broken, it just is the way it is, right?
Yeah.
And so as a practice owner, again, I love being an orthodontist. Some days I tend to repeat and do the same things over and over again, which gets a little mundane. And one of the things that I really love, that I've learned about myself through the years, is that what I love to do is really look at a problem inside the practice and figure out a creative solution to that problem. And that's really what happened with retainers. I think any orthodontist on the call would agree that retainers are a problem. Lost retainers, broken retainers. We spend so much time creating these raving fans, creating these patients that have this exceptional experience inside our practice, not to mention giving them amazing results at the end of that therapy. And to have all of that break down over the first lost retainer is just really hard. Right. And it's hard sitting in the seat of the orthodontist, but I think it's even worse when you're sitting on the side of the patient or the parent. And, what I saw happen over and over and over again in my office was these patients carrying the shame or guilt associated with really just losing one retainer. And my focus was to take that problem that I saw inside my practice and work towards a solution or a way to eliminate that. And, when I used to finish patients in treatment, I cringe now when I think about this, but I would hand them the retainer. Hey, this is like $100 bill in your hand, protect it, be careful with it. Don't let anything bad happen to it. And they, their eyes would get big as saucers. In fact, it was a $300 bill in their hand, but that was the way I used to describe it.
Yeah.
course, the patients, when they lose that $100 bill, are going to be upset and have bad feelings, and some of those bad feelings flow on to the orthodontist from the patient or the parent, which was a problem as well. And with the solution, Retainers for Life, because now patients can go online, order them, replace them for a small fraction of the cost. My conversation with them is completely different. And that's really what I love about the program. Now, when I get to the end, I look at a patient and I'm like, hey, if you lose your retainer, it's not a big deal. Just let your mom or dad know. And they're going to go online and order another one. Even if you can't find it, that's not a big deal. Just let them know the order you want. If you find the original one and you have an extra one, that's a bonus.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been really, really good.
That's great. So I love hearing the journey of, taking a problem that you saw in your practice. And as you and I both know, we've been doing this for a while. This wasn't a new problem. And lots of people have, over the years tried to, come up with what is their Retainer for Life program for their practice, their DIY solution, right? So what I love about this, and, again, being a woman and being an entrepreneur myself, looking at that and saying, okay, I see a need, and I think I have a solution that's better than maybe what I have been seeing so far, or what I've been, seeing in the chat groups, or this, that, and the other. So thank you for, just seeing that need and bringing something new to our industry. But the other thing that, I think is so great is this really is a program that we can integrate, whether you're a bigger existing practice, right? Or, maybe one of my new, startups, or a doc that's done an acquisition. So can you just kind of talk to me a little bit about, kind of how did that journey happen in your practice? Because you were, and up and running, you've got multiple practices, and you said, okay, I see a solution to a problem I think I can implement, but let's just talk a little bit about that, and then how that's saved you, not only because this is your company, but just what it's done for you and your team as you have decided to kind of implement something like this.
Yeah. So as you know, you are the expert in really that the doctor on the back end is either transitioning, or the doctor on the front end that's opening a startup. And so they're really different beasts. I would say for the new startup, the beauty of it is if you didn't even want to have a lab inside your office, with this program, you really don't. For me, the way that I've incorporated into my practice is that Retainers for Life is making the first retainer for the patient. So Retainers for Life makes the retainer for me for free, and that's the first one that I deliver. And then all of the subsequent replacement retainers are paid for by the patient. So that's saving me from needing a 3D printer. I don't have resin costs. I don't have labor costs in making the first retainer or the replacement retainers. So there's a huge savings factor. I think of a startup and, well, first of all, you know this. You're the consultant expert on startup practices and those practices that are getting ready to transition, right? And so I think of those entities very differently. When I think about the startup, the beauty for the program for a startup client is that if they so choose, they really don't need a lab if they're utilizing this program for their patients. And the reason for that is Retainers for Life makes their first retainer for the patient or for the doctor for free. So it's made with doctor preferences. So if you think about all of the costs that's going to eliminate, I mean, that's square footage that you're eliminating. If for me, I had a full-time lab tech, which I don't have anymore. I don't need anymore. There's no 3D printing costs. There's no resin costs. There's no labor associated with making the original retainer or the replacement retainers. So there's a big advantage and cost savings there. The other thing is, patients are now coming in saying, hey, are you a doctor that does the Retainers for Life program? And as a startup, you want to be able to say yes to all of those questions, because you want really all of those patients that you can, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Now let's talk about this as an existing, because again, you did this. You were a full-blown practice. How do you get your team on board with this? How do you say, yeah, I know maybe I did invest at one point in one of those older 3D printers, or but I just love doing impressions and scans, and I'm joking, right? In regard to retainers, but how do you implement that, especially with your team and getting them on board? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh, beautiful question. So two things that are really, really important to that. The first is you need the doctor that's on board, a doctor that understands they're partnering with Retainers for Life. We're not a company. We're not selling anything. We're providing a service for the patients that they need or eventually will need, right?
Yep.
So the doctor mindset coming in saying, this is something that's good for my patients. It's convenient. It's helping maintain this extremely quality outcome that I gave to the patients and helping protect their investment. So the first is the mindset of the doctor being on board and telling their team, this is something that we're going to do. I want to do this, and the patients want it. So that's number one. For me, it was a bit of an easier transition because originally I was doing all these retainers in-house. And so I thought in the beginning, that's fine. My team doesn't mind making all these replacement retainers. At the time, as I mentioned, I had a full-time lab tech, so she was making all the original retainers, their patient's primary retainers. But she didn't have time to make all these replacement retainers. And so my clinical team was sharing that duties, and they were doing that coming early in the morning, working over their lunch hour, taking impressions. They don't have to do any of that anymore. So every single bit of that is eliminated, which was a ton of work and burden for them, which at the time, year one, they weren't really complaining. I'll use the word complaining much. But, by the time we moved forward through the years and we had just piles of replacement retainers that needed to be done, it was a ton of work for them, and they weren't getting a piece of the action. Our program is set up so they do nothing. They don't have to make any replacement retainers, and they get paid not to make the retainers. So that was an easy sell. For a new practice, it's a little different. It's really all about the doctor mindset. But from a practice, then doing it in-house or back of practice is what I call it, program, this is a no-brainer. Your team will thank you every single day.
I love it. I love it. And of course my ears perk up a little bit, and maybe, some of my docs are like, wait, you just said the team gets paid. Just tell me a little bit about that, because I think that's like a concept in and of itself, that we're getting the team behind something that, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. How does this actually help us produce more in our practice? And as a consultant, that's what I'm always looking for my clients. But talk a little bit about that little pearl right there.
My team is everything, and I'm sure you've heard the term happy wife, happy life, right?
Oh, for sure, right?
Which there is a lot of truth in that, Jill, right?
Yes, there is. 32 years married. Yes, there is. So I see my practice no different, my business, right? If my team is happy, I am happy. And, I've always been a big proponent of empowering your team. I actually went to I'm a Baylor Bear, and the head coach, Dave Aranda, was in town, and he was talking a couple weeks ago, and he's a quirky guy, but he had a couple of pearls. And one of the things that he was talking about is how he has taken this group of 10 to 11 guys and created a leadership foundation for these guys. And the purpose is to really bring them up so that they become the coaches on the field. So that when, it's fourth and one on the goal line, and the Big 12 championship, which happened this past year, and they can't call a timeout, that they are themselves leading the team and stopping it at the goal line, which we won, the Big 12 championship because of that. And also he said, he's been out doing promotions, and he was speaking at the head coaches convention in San Antonio, and he said, I've been out
and off the field for 2 weeks. He's like, I could not do that unless I had a team of leaders that was able to do that for me inside the organization. And I just love that. It really spoke to me because I feel the same way about my practice, right? If I educate my girls up and really empower them to do all of the things that I can do, then I can step away from the practice, I can work on other projects, and I can feel good when I'm not in the practice that they're doing all of the things that need to be done. So that's key. I forgot the original question. I got sidetracked on football.
No, that's great. That's great. No, so what I was saying is let's talk a little bit about the employees being able to make a little bit of money off of the program. Like how does that work, and how is that not impacting the doctor?
Yeah, so you have to appreciate your team, and you have to appreciate them in many different ways. Saying thank you, teaching them, giving them education opportunities, but also putting money in their hands. My team works very, very, very hard, as I know your team does as well. And I want to be able to financially reward them. And because this is new revenue that I didn't have before this type of program, that allows us, Retainers for Life, to actually pay the employees for the memberships that they're selling inside their practice. Now, every practice is a little different. My practice, we track who sells the memberships, and that person gets paid. Some offices that we work with, we're still tracking memberships sold, but they share the bonus between the team. So that's really doctor directed how they share those funds. But I think it's really, really important if somebody's doing a good job inside your practice selling these Retainers for Life memberships, that they're reaping a financial reward.
Yeah, I love that. And, as a consultant, one of the things that I'm always, talking to my practices about is, how do we find ways, the easy ways, like the low-hanging fruit in our practice, to add in that extra production. And one of the things that, really intrigued me and I love so much about this program is we're able to add on these programs outside of our initial contracts. So we don't have to worry about if we're contracted with insurance and how it affects different things. But also, we aren't actually right? If I'm correct, the doctors aren't actually doing these programs necessarily through their office. You're doing it through Retainers for Life. So can you talk a little bit about how that works? Because I just thought, this has been, again, such a problem. We've had Retainer for Life programs around the DIY side of it for so long. And I just really loved how you guys were able to take this and, again, see a problem, get it outside. I always say a problem is when we have to, especially if we happen to be a doc that's an in-network doc, and we're already taking such a hit, even though I look at it as a marketing hit, we're still taking a hit by being in network with insurances. So being able to take something like this, and whether we want to capitalize on making that production on the front end of our practice, I kind of like to do it on the back end, but I think everybody's got their own ideas on that. But I just love this idea of making money off of non-producing appointments. And that's really what we're doing is, kind of giving us that extra little boost at the I would say at the end. I know some people like to do it at the beginning, and I think it's just a matter of what works best in your practice. But can you talk a little bit about how you guys have kind of structured that so that, if a patient loses their retainer, they aren't necessarily calling your office, and how you've kind of got that set up now?
Yeah, so I think one thing that's important to know is that every practice is very, very different. So when we start with a practice, it starts with a discovery call to understand what the pain points in the practice are and how the doctor wants to structure the program inside their practice. Just as you mentioned, some people are doing it at the end, some people are doing it at the beginning, some people are doing both, and it really depends on the unique DNA of that practice. And we need to understand that first so that we can build a program that we know will be successful inside that practice. The two key differentiators for us is really this convenience factor, right? So patients don't have to come in anymore. They don't have to store models. They don't have to bring models in. It's just they go online, click, 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 order like they're ordering something on Amazon, and that retainer gets dropped off directly to their door. So that's That's really key. The other really big differentiator is we as a company, our marketing platform is built on, one of the prongs of our marketing is built on connecting that patient with that original doctor for years to come, continuing to touch and be in front of them, so that if there's a point when they stop wearing the retainers and they need relapse treatment, that patient is funneled back to that doctor, not to these direct-to-consumer aligner companies, so that doctor can then reap that income as well. And that's something that's very important to us. That's really, we haven't, another problem that we traditionally had is we see that patient for the last retainer check and then they're gone and we don't see them again. And so that is also very, very important to us.
I love that. And it's like this kind of drip campaign, right? Over multiple years. And I love that idea of, thinking of it as just little soft touches, and as many doctors who've worked with me, it's all about our brand awareness, right? And having, having people continue to be aware of us even once they're finished. And, and I think for any of us in the industry, and I'm sure, you as a doctor as well, you hate it when somebody's like, oh, who is your orthodontist? And they're like, they were, over there. And we now have the technology and all of these different things to stay in front of our patients and to have them at least be like, oh, it's Dr. Jackson. Oh yeah. And I see, my retainers, whatever it is that you guys are doing. I love that. And what an extra added value that, again, is taking this small problem that we had in our industry and saying, hey, it's not just about providing a platform to get retainers, but now we can actually come up with maybe some marketing campaigns off of, I'll call them cold leads, and, maybe cultivate something or continue. We're always looking for new avenues for new patients. So I love that. I love that's been happening.
Yeah. So what's important to us is it's not retainers for life that's front and center on the patient. We do co-branding. So it's the doctor, and it's this convenience thing that the doctor has allowed you to have because he's smart enough to bring it into the practice. And that's really, really important to us. And, I'll mention here again, every doctor is very different. I personally want to free up chair time. I want to open more hours so I can spend that time with my family or on other projects or have more days off. There's some doctors that love to see their patients for the retainer checks, and that is a great value for them in their practice. And if they want to continue to do that, they absolutely can. We're not trying to tell doctors how to practice or how to see their retention patients. We're just trying to make it more convenient and more affordable for them to replace their retainers. So we are a partner with them, and I don't really want to see my patients after their last retainer check, but I would like to see them back when they need relapse treatment because that's income for me. So figuring out staying front and center with the co-branding is really, really important.
Yeah, I love that. So we're going to wrap it up here. I've got 2 more questions for you, and then we're going to move into the speed round. All right. So my first one is, what happens, because I know somebody's thinking this, this all sounds great, but what happened when a retainer doesn't fit? If they aren't in my office, what's going on here? So can you talk a little bit about that as we finish up?
Yeah. So when we built the company, we knew this would be one of our number one issues that we had to solve. Unfortunately, there's no silver bullet for this, and there's no one perfect solution. Some of the things that we have done to help with that, we've hired somebody whose full-time job all day long every day is really to review the scans that are submitted. If they are below the quality that we need, or they didn't capture the second molars, or whatever the case might be, then the practices are continually communicated with. If we start to see a whole grouping within a practice, then that triggers us for education, right? We need to help that doctor help his scan quality, because the quality of the retainer starts with the quality of the scan. So that's number one. And then built into our system are a lot of different levers that are pulled when a patient orders a retainer. And so they have to submit that they've been wearing their retainer continuously and their old retainer fit before they're allowed to place a new order. And the simplest solution is really an updated scan. And so I traditionally in my office am doing 2 scans, one for the retainers and then one once the gingival inflammation has gone down. So that's just a standard thing that I do because I know that second scan is going to produce a better retainer. But then if the patient has been out of their retainer, let's just pick a number, for 4 weeks, they don't know where it is, they just forgot to call, then in my practice, that patient it comes back to the office, usually on a day when I'm not working. I don't need it to be there for the scan, patient scan, and then they order a new retainer on that scan. So happens all the time. And then, the final thing that we tend to see is that the teeth have relapsed. The retainer's not going to fit. They're not going to be happy with getting a retainer on top of the new scan. So that is the perfect time that we funnel them back to their orthodontist for that retreatment conversation.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right, my last question. This all sounds great, but what if somebody said, hey, Jill, hey, Dr. Amy, what if I, why can't I just do this myself? I think I can figure this out. What would you say? Because we know there are going to be people who are going to do that or who are doing that, but kind of what is your thought process in saying this is that? And in my mind as a consultant, I kind of think of that as this potential for an outsourced employee, this potential for an outsourced position in our practice that allows us to free up time. And I think you hit on it, but I'll let you say what you think about it.
Beautiful, and I think you would agree with me when I say I'm an orthodontist, right? I'm not in the business of telling people what they should or shouldn't do. And every doctor is very different. Every practice is very different. And I'm not going to suggest anybody shouldn't do this or at least experiment with it inside their own practice. What I will say is that what we offer is the ultimate inconvenience. Being able to pick up your phone, order a replacement, have it shipped to your door is really what patients are looking for, and it's what all we do all day long, every day, so we have perfected that. That's the first thing. Second thing I will tell you is when I was doing it inside my practice, I was selling the program, and I was selling a lot of it, but I wasn't making a lot of replacement retainers. And so for me, as a business, I was talking patients into buying this, but they weren't actually reaping the benefits of it. And so it was a bit of wasting their money, which didn't feel good. As soon as I outsourced it and did this click, order, and had it shipped to their door, the ordering of retainers went up 500%. So now, it's more convenient. They're getting their money's worth, which makes me feel even better about providing the program. And the last thing I'll say is really and this comes to my team, not to me, but most of the doctors will say, I feel like I can make more money doing it on my own than doing it with you guys. And what we have found is that they actually, even sharing with us, they're making more money because we have perfected this conversion of the patients into the Retainers for Life program so that they're making more money doing it with us because their conversion is higher in comparison to those doctors that aren't using our service.
Sure. That's great. Well, thank you so much for, just giving us some good information and being on the podcast. I know that anybody who is listening, I know you have gotten a lot out of this. So we're going to finish up now. We're going to jump into the speed round here. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Are you ready to accept the challenge?
Am I ready? I don't know. I'll give you an I don't know.
All right. Well, here we go. So, favorite ice cream?
Oh, cookies and cream.
All righty. Have you ever worn socks with sandals?
Oh, no, Jill, that's terrible.
Unless you live in Colorado and you wear Birkenstocks, right? All right. No. How about Star Wars or Star Trek?
I'm more of a documentary, not a sci-fi girl, but between the two, I'll say Star Wars.
Okay, all righty, perfect. Is double dipping ever acceptable?
Well, I'm going to say yes because I tend to do it a lot. It grosses out my 13-year-old son, but, sometimes if it's just too good, you got to go back in.
Yep, I love it. Do you wear your retainer every night?
Oh, that's a no.
Okay. How would you rate your karaoke skills on a scale of 1 to Beyonce?
Oh, I feel like it should be 1 to Whitney Houston, but I like Beyonce too. I have been on the microphone before, and if other people were judging me, they'd probably give me a 2, so I'll give myself a 2. But, if I can hit the high notes, which is probably why I get rated a 2.
I love it. I love it. All right. Tomatoes, are they a fruit or a vegetable?
I eat a lot of salads, and I usually have tomatoes with my salad. So I'm going to vote for vegetable because that makes me feel better about eating them.
Perfect. Okay, just a few more. Any show you've been watching recently?
So I just finished The Last Kingdom on Netflix, and it was fabulous. The characters are super, super rich. The story is very, very good. I'm a fan of watching a show once they finish all the series. So there were five years of the program, and it was really great. I will warn you, if you've ever seen Braveheart, there are a lot of fighting scenes and a lot of blood, but the story is fantastic.
I love it. I'm always looking for a new show to be watching. How about what podcast, audio, music have you been listening to lately? Got a favorite out there?
Oh, so I'm super nerdy here. So as far as books, right now I'm reading Prisoner B 3087 with my son for his 7th grade summer reading, which is about the Holocaust, and it follows a young boy from 13. We're about in the middle of lost his age because he's been in the concentration camp and hasn't had a birthday for a couple years, so he's about 16 now. That's a good one. With the team, I'm reading Good to Great, and my favorite chapter is definitely 5. If you get a chance to just read that chapter or listen to audio, it's fabulous. On the personal side, I'm reading Life Force by Tony Robbins and 2 other authors, which is just super fascinating and interesting, especially in the medical field. So highly recommend that. As far as podcasts, I would listen to podcasts all day long if I didn't work or be on court TV all day long, solving crime. So I have a couple there. I like Good to Great, and not Good to Great. I like How I Built It with Guy Raz. I love anything with Andrew Huberman. Rhonda Patrick is also great. So several there that I really love.
That's great. All right, and to finish it up, if you had to pick a big, hairy, audacious goal for either the end of this year or for next, what's your big, hairy, audacious goal that you're going for?
Oh, that's so hard. I have personal ones. I have professional ones.
Just give us one.
Okay. Spanish. I need to learn to speak Spanish.
I love it. I just downloaded the Babbel app myself because that is on my big, hairy, audacious goal list as well.
Love it. Well, speaking of podcasts, I just finished listening to a podcast on the founder of Duolingo. So you might listen to that and you might change over to Duolingo. But it's accessible to us now. So I just need to commit to it and make it a part of my daily habit. And by 2024, when I see you at the next Ortho Evolution Conference, I'm going to be speaking in Spanish to you.
All right. I love it. And hopefully I will be doing the same back. Well, again, Amy, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. And I just love the information that we were able to get out today. So again, thank you.
Thank you for all that you're doing for the industry, for both startups and transitioning practices and all in between. You're always a pleasure to be with, and just thank you for your time today, Phil.
Yep. All right. Till next time.